Hello and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be talking to Chris Haig. He is a violinist whose playing encompasses a whole range of styles, including Irish fiddling, jazz, blues, klezmer, rock. And Chris is also the author of a number of books on various fiddle styles, as well as a brilliant website called Fiddling Around. But before 2020, his main income stream was from playing live events and gigs. So in common with many other musicians, the pandemic has been a disaster from that point of view. However, he has used the downtime to develop other ways of earning money online and continuing to be creative. So in our conversation, he shared how he has developed a YouTube music channel from scratch this year, as well as expanding his remote recording sessions and online courses. I was particularly interested in the studio gear he was using and was really surprised to discover that he has achieved this without spending hundreds on expensive equipment and software. So hopefully viewers of this channel, where I share lots of information on home recording made easy, especially aimed at beginners, will be really interested to find out how he's done it. I share regular videos on home studio recording. If that sounds like something you're interested in, then do subscribe. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Any comments or questions, do post them below. I love to read them. Now let's go and catch up with Chris. I am delighted to welcome Chris Haig to my channel. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Jane.
Hi,
good
thank
to see
you
you.
so much for coming along. I first became aware of you about 18 months ago when I got hold of this book. Because I was I'm coming back to the violin after years of not playing it and looking to do anything but classical. And so I came across this book, and it's absolutely phenomenal resource on not just how to play, but I think you mentioned 150 different rock violinists in it.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's a really good resource. So last Christmas, I got this fiddle, the jazz fiddle. And klezmer fiddle. So I'm a bit of a fan of your books, you know. And so
we need more people like you in the world.
Yes, well, I can recommend any violinist watching this. You need one of Chris's books. They're just excellent, really good books. So that's how I kind of knew about you. And then I'd had a little look on. You've got a very interesting website for anyone who's interested in different fiddle styles, which you've been building up for years, I think.
I have. It's probably 20 years at least. That I've
because it's really interesting. There's a lot of very interesting information on that and so on. So that's another really good resource. I guess your main bread and butter was probably live playing pre-2020.
It certainly was, yeah. And it was a real mixture of run-of-the-mill money gigs, shall we say, and quite interesting gigs with interesting styles, interesting players, and making very little money and getting very few gigs.
Right.
But an interesting mix. But not until the treadmill came to a stop did I realise it was actually a bit of a treadmill. That's
interesting, isn't it? Because obviously, 2020 for live musicians is just a disaster. It's been an interesting year for anyone who was in that sort of thing, live or hospitality based, because you did a lot of weddings as well, didn't you? And sort of
loads of weddings, loads of kind of corporate things, loads of pub gigs, all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
So just died on its feet in March.
Yeah.
So I then started seeing videos of yours popping up in places like Christian House's Creative Strings Facebook group. There was a couple of videos came out. I thought, oh, I know that face. And that YouTube channel that you've been doing, you literally started in March.
It was most fortuitous. I had a rehearsal. I think it was about a week before lockdown. I think we all knew at the rehearsal that we were rehearsing for nothing.
Right.
But the guitarist, a chap called Ramon Goose, an amazing guitarist, he told us all that he just made a large amount of money from 1 month of his YouTube channel.
Oh, right.
And I wasn't aware that he had one. I wasn't really aware of what one was. But I immediately knew that that's what I wanted to do. And the timing couldn't have been better, because if it had been like 6 months earlier, I wouldn't have taken the idea very seriously.
No.
But all of a sudden, this was a way of attempting to keep a living going, and also a way to keep being creative.
Yeah.
Because I'm a bit of a workaholic, and
I think you must be, because
it could have been terrible this year, having nothing to do.
Yeah.
But this is a lot to do. This is a big job.
Yeah.
And I've taken it very seriously. I've virtually said from the beginning, this is my full-time job for the foreseeable future.
Right. Yes, I think that's what you need to do, because you are churning out 3 videos a week, I think.
It is 3, yes. I think almost every week I've managed 3 videos.
Yeah, much more prolific than me. I know we're so good at yeah. So you're managing to churn these videos out, and they're excellent quality. And it's now becoming this, like your books, just sort of massive. Did you say you got, last time I heard you got over 90 videos? So
yes, it's probably well over 100 by now.
Yeah. So in that space of time, it's phenomenal, and they're all different styles. You've got gypsy jazz, blues, bluegrass.
Yeah, one of the things I've aimed at is for a real broad range, partly to get into different niches, because a lot of what I do is linked with Facebook groups. So I advertise in all the different Facebook groups. But also I want people, when they see the channel, to look at it as a library, which has got everything that they're going to want. And over the years, I want it to be the biggest library of fiddle lessons that there is.
Yeah. Well, it's becoming that way. And they are phenomenal lessons, and they always got a good. I mean, you've got a great touch, because you've got this great sense of humor about what you do as well, and little jokes and asides, but also real quality, and they're a nice length as well. The videos, they're just a nice bite size, let's learn a tune or let's learn a technique, and really good. So anybody who's watching this, who is a violinist who hasn't found you yet, they need to get on there, because it's becoming a really good resource. And also, you've recently started a Patreon. I don't know how you say
Patreon. Yeah, Patreon. When I started the Fiddle channel, I noticed that this friend of mine, Ramon, he had a Patreon page, and I didn't know what it was. So I had a look, and he only had 3 Patreons, despite having a massive channel.
Right.
So I thought, this is probably not something that's actually very successful or is going to work. And I checked a few other artists out, and they also didn't have many patrons. But about 2 months ago, several in quick succession of my people who've been watching my videos said, is there any way we can contribute?
Right.
And that made me think about it again. And it has actually been extremely successful.
It's going well, isn't it? Because I am one of your members of that, and I can see the numbers gradually going up.
Yeah, I've got about 25 at the moment.
Brilliant.
And I think it'll continue to grow fairly steadily.
Yeah, and it's only been going a few weeks, really, hasn't it? So
yeah.
Anyone who becomes a patron, you can get access to backing tracks. There's extra videos in there, and so that's becoming another. Yeah, it's really good. So the reason I wanted to invite you on here actually is because my channel is populated with musicians who are at the start of recording journeys. Really, we're talking about people who are sort of, what is a microphone? What is an interface? How do I put them together? Where do I start? And obviously, this year the biggest the things I get asked about a lot are recording yourself a video, getting yourself online, maybe live streaming, putting the whole thing together. How do you sync the music? How do you, where do you start? So I was hoping to pick your brains, because yours, you've obviously churning out 3 a week. And I think you said at the beginning, you spent 2 weeks teaching yourself how to do it.
Yeah, there are so many videos online about how to make videos.
Yes.
And a lot of them are very good. But one thing you realize is that there are so many different ways of succeeding in YouTube. But people will say, this is how you've got to do it. You've got to have this. And then someone else will say, this is what you've got to do. You've got to have this.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you look at some of the really successful YouTube channels, they don't do any of those things. A lot of them, in fact, I'm not naming any names. Some of the really successful ones are really not very good at all.
Right.
But they've been around a long time, and they've churned them out, and they've succeeded.
Yeah. Well, it's really down to the content. If the content is good, you will start attracting people who are interested in your content. If your content's rubbish, don't bother. You've got to have something to say, really, or something that you trying to teach.
And I've come to realize that a lot of the technical detail of the videos is actually not so important.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I'd only done a few videos, someone got in touch who also does fiddle videos, and he said, you've got a lot of jumps in between on the breaks, because there's break after break after break.
Yeah.
And he'd found a way of matching up exactly the one clip to the next clip, so that you didn't notice the breaks.
Right.
And it probably took him hours and hours for every single one of them.
Yeah.
And having watched a lot of other people's videos, I realized that some people were perfectly happy to jump, from one take to the next, without any worry at all. And if people are with you and if they like what you're doing, then all of those technical details don't have to be perfect.
They really don't. So the important thing is people need to be able to need to see you. You need a reasonable angle so that they can see your violin, and they need to, be able to hear you. I mean, the audio for you is more important than anything, probably.
The audio is important, and all I use for the audio for the fiddle is the camera. I've got a Canon Legria HF R66, which is pretty bottom of the market. It's probably 150 quid, something like that.
Right.
And the built-in mic on that is perfectly adequate.
So you are you've already blown me away. Because I'm here to ask you what microphones and interface and all this. So you are literally, you set your camcorder up and you literally just teach to the camcorder.
Exactly.
And you're capturing all the sound through that.
All of the sound of my voice and fiddle,
Yes.
For the backing that I use, it's slightly different. So I have usually an MP3 or an AIFF file on my computer, which is down at my right-hand side out of view. And I play that through one of these, a little kind of remote speaker. So that's in my ear, and some of that will be picked up by the camera.
Yes.
And sometimes it's loud enough that that's okay on its own, but often I will then drop in, during the editing, the original MP3. So I get a perfectly clean backing track.
Yeah, okay.
And because all my backing tracks have a click in, so I just have to listen to the 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can line those up with the MP3.
Okay, wow. That is really, really interesting. That's how you do it. It's actually quite a low-tech.
It is a low-tech.
Yeah.
And I could use a microphone, and the microphone would then have to go through a mixing desk, and it would then have to go to another laptop to record it. But the sound then wouldn't be much better than it is from the camera, because the camera is picking up the ambience of the room and it's matching my voice. So what I would gain from using a mic would be, I think, cancelled out by the amount of effort it would take each time to set all that up.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. Wow.
And it's not like making a record where people are going to listen to it purely for the music.
Yes.
That's not what these are about. It's getting across a message.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So camcorder. Do you have any kind of lighting?
I do. I've got a cheap. I think it's called a softbox. It's like a big black thing with a big bulb in the middle.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I got from Amazon, and it was about 25 quid, something like that.
Amazon is a good source of sort of. There's lots of video making
instant stuff. Yeah.
So you've got a softbox lighting, a camcorder.
I've now started using a little light on the floor behind me.
Yes.
Which a lot of people said you should have a light behind you, and it does indeed. It makes a nice effect.
Yes.
If you notice on the last month or so, there's been this kind of yellow glow from the floor behind me, and I think that looked really nice.
Yeah, I think that's true. Now, the backing tracks is interesting because you use Band in a Box.
I use Band in a Box, and I can't recommend it highly enough to anybody. I think it's fantastic.
It's one of those software. It's kind of not a very trendy piece of software, I would say. So you won't get your kind of like techno wizards.
Oh no, they would absolutely sneer at it. Yeah.
Yes, and yet
I started using it years ago when it was very crude. Right. When there were no real sounds, when the only thing that was any good on it was the piano sound.
Right, yeah.
But over the past 10 years or so, they've started bringing in the real sounds and the real styles.
Yeah.
In fact, my beginning jazz violin book, that's one I did about 5 years ago, and some of the backing tracks were done with a live 4-piece band,
right,
gypsy jazz band, and some of them were done with Band in a Box.
Right.
And you can hardly tell the difference, which is amazing.
It is amazing, and they are great. I mean, the quality, because one of the treats you get as a Patreon member is you can get backing tracks, and you've sent me a couple, and they're just really they're really nice quality. I think the other thing that's really good about that is the copyright. You don't have to worry about copyright, do you? at all?
No, it's all copyright free, which is good.
Because you're allowed, once you've created your chord sequence in Band in a Box, it's complete. You can use it however you like, commercially even. There's no copyright thing. So it's it's very interesting. So you've recorded on your camcorder. What sort of video editing software are you using then? I'm
using iMovie, which is the one that comes free with the Mac.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's pretty straightforward. I think a lot of people will use the Final Cut Pro. Yeah. And
that's about £300, isn't it?
It probably is, and it's probably a lot of work to learn it as well.
Yes, well, that's the problem. That is the problem. Yeah. So iMovie is pretty straightforward, and I suppose your video, by the way you've done it, you're not putting lots of overlays on it or anything, other than you have the dots. You've used Sibelius to write out the dots for quite a lot of pieces that you do. They appear as you're playing them, which is absolutely fantastic. Because if you want to play along,
I think a lot of people really like that, and it's relatively rare with tuition videos to have that.
It is. So in iMovie, you can do that. You can add a picture on.
Yeah. So the process is you create a Sibelius file, and then you save that as a graphic, which is called a .png, and then the PNG you import into your iMovie. Yeah, and then you just drag it onto the screen.
Wow.
And place it up in a corner.
Yeah, so you just have to make sure you're positioned somewhere so that you've got a space for it when you.
Yeah, I always for the bit where the music's going to be in the corner, I reposition that bit of my own video. So that there is a space in the corner.
Okay, right. So you can still see you, but you've still seen this in iMovie. You see, this is the ultimate low budget, low tech, high output, high quality. You know, I'm really impressed.
But stuff like placing that bit of music up in the top corner. There's around 7 different steps to doing that, and when you try and figure it out the first time in iMovie, you think I can't possibly see how this could ever happen.
Right.
But I found someone who explained how to do exactly that and the steps that you had to go through.
Right.
And once I'd learned that, it's a very quick process.
Yeah.
But although iMovie is straightforward and simple, it's not that straightforward and simple.
No,
and so
I find it very quirky, actually. Yeah. Because I use Camtasia, because I do a lot of screen recording. I just recording software, screenshots and things, and so it's good for that. And so I've got used to using it, and that is a very nice video editor. So when I've gone to look at iMovie, I just think, whoa, I don't know where to start with it. But I mean, it's YouTube is full of iMovie tutorials, so usually you can work out if you can do it, you'll find out how to do it eventually.
Absolutely, yeah.
The other thing that I think people on my channel will be really interested in is the fact that you also, and I presume this has increased this year, or have you always done it? You will do remote recording sessions, won't you?
Yeah, it actually hasn't increased that much, but I have been doing a lot. I probably started the remote sessions about 5 years ago.
Okay, so quite a long time then, right.
And I'm successful at it because of my website, because I've got a page which kind of sells the idea of fiddle sessions. And because my website is so successful, a lot of people go to that page, even though they've never heard of me.
Right.
So I get a lot of work that way. Yeah. Mostly pretty obscure stuff, but sometimes like BBC documentaries and, quite good stuff. And again, I keep the low budget, lo-fi as much as possible. So for those, I use GarageBand.
Okay, right.
Which is free. Again the free Mac system, and one that I'm sure a lot of most studio people would sneer at.
Yeah.
But what I'm doing is very simple. All I have to do is to import an MP3 from them, record my fiddle over that, and send it back. Yeah. I don't have to do any big production numbers.
Yeah. And so you don't do any post production. You just send them the kind of pretty much the raw violin track, and they're going to do what they want to do.
It's up to them, So I will normally send back 3 or 4 versions of each track, and it's up to them to either choose them or mix and match the different takes.
And I noticed you've got a nice page on your site actually about the way you mic yourself for that, and it's different to what you do for your videos, because you've got I think it's a DPA 4099.
Yeah, well, there's a sad story there. I used that for ages. I managed to blag one by an amazing piece of good luck,
because they're not cheap.
They're not cheap. They're about nearly 500 quid, I think.
Really nice.
And I used it exclusively for recording for about 15 years.
Right.
And then last year at a rehearsal, I can't even remember why I brought it along, but I did, and I stepped on it and broke it.
No.
Yeah, so a very expensive mistake. But what I then did, I asked a friend of mine, what's the best mic to use in my situation, low budget, and he recommended, I'm just going to grab it. It's a Russian thing. It's an Octava.
Ah, yes.
And
Okay.
so this is a close mic. I think they call it a hypercardioid, but don't quote me on that.
No, well, I could look it up. Yes.
And what's special about this is that because it works close up, it doesn't pick up the sound of the room.
Right, and it's super direct.
And that is very important, because if you want to record in your bedroom or in your kitchen or something, then you're not going to have that perfectly padded sound which a studio has, which has got all this padding in the corners and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that unless you've got a proper professional setup.
No.
And so having a close mic enables you to basically ignore the room.
Okay, so where do you point that?
So that comes in pretty close, about 6 inches to probably about 9 inches, pointing down at the fiddle.
Okay, right.
And then that goes into a mixing desk, which just is basically providing the what's it called?
The phantom power. Does it?
Yeah, the phantom power. Yeah, and the
amplification preamp.
Yeah, and then that goes through a.
Oh, you brought all the props. This is great.
It's all here somewhere. This is now pretty ancient. This is what's called an iMic.
You run it through an iMic.
That's just the interface that allows it to go then through a USB and into the laptop.
Wow, those iMics, they're years old.
It's ancient, and I'm no doubt we'll have to replace it fairly soon.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow. Again, it's not like, several £100 interface at all.
No, I could no doubt easily spend 3 or 4 grand on extra gear, and it would hardly make any difference.
No, it's really interesting.
The only thing it would do is if I listed the gear, then people who are deciding whether or not to use me might think slightly better of me because I was using expensive gear.
They might, but I mean, at the end of the day, you've got this massive CV of people you've played for and things that you've done, and so they're going to say, "Oh, this is the guy," and just GarageBand. Wow. So yeah. So here's me. I've got all the gear and no idea, and you're the one. Do you know? I think the people who are watching my channel are going to be really interested in this as sort of the way forward for a lot of them, because I do get all this angst about, what kind of mic, what kind of this and that. And at the end of the day, what it's all about is getting your content out and getting started somewhere.
One thing we haven't mentioned, that's the thumbnails.
Oh, yes.
Because I think that's really important for your videos, because basically the stuff that appears down the right-hand side of your YouTube, that's where people will often select what they're going to look at next. And it's got to look good. Yes. And fortunately, I have for years used a thing called Adobe Illustrator.
Right. So you've done those yourself then?
And Adobe Illustrator is probably the only top-end piece of kit that I use in the whole thing. Right. But because I've used that for ages, I know basically how to use it. Yeah. Right. And that allows me. I set up a template to start with, to get exactly the right dimensions, and then I just drag everything onto that template every time I do a new one. Because you have got it's a very nice consistent look as well. And when you go to your channel, it's very consistent, and you've got a nice header. And then I noticed on your website you've put the same sort of header on the website. I'm sure that you can do all the stuff that I've done with Illustrator on cheaper bits of software, but I've never looked into that because I've not needed to. If you've got it and you can use it, the biggest thing. I mean, I've got Photoshop. Which it's just too difficult. It's very difficult. I mean, the problem is when you're doing this, you're probably the same as me. You are doing everything. You're the cameraman. You're the audio recording. You're doing the video editing, which is quite time consuming, and then you're doing the put the things on and doing the thumbnails and everything. And you just got to be able to use it. So I tend to use Pixlr, which is like a web-based one, which I just find so much easier to use, and it's free. So, well, thanks very much for all that, because that is really a lot of information there that will be
very useful to any of the beginners that are looking at my channel. I know that you've got coming up. Oh, I know what I'm really excited about. You've already got a music gurus course for your jazz violin, and you're about to get one on the rock violin book.
That's right. Yeah. We filmed it last month. They said very ambitiously they were hoping to get it out by Christmas.
Yeah.
Which I thought it was unlikely, and in fact, it almost certainly is not going to be out.
No.
But it will be out in January.
No,
and it's
that's good.
30 lessons, which is the bulk of the book is in there.
Right, that'd be really good. And I was really comforted by the fact that you said you got to relearn all the pieces, and they were quite tricky.
Some of them are really quite hard.
Tell me about it. And then you've got Academy of Folk.
That's it's slow in taking off that, but I think that's going to be good.
Yeah, you do.
This is someone else's company. It's not my thing, but they settled on me to start it off. We started off with a thing called a foundation course, which basically introduces you to the basics of fiddle playing and to a load of different fiddle styles.
Right.
And then there's a complete Irish fiddle course, and planned are quite a lot of other different style courses. Brilliant. And this is all a subscription thing.
Yes.
Where one subscription gives you everything on the site.
Right, okay. Yeah. And
so that's already up and running, yeah.
Yeah. And then I think you've got some workshops coming up in January, Strings Without Boundaries.
Strings Without Boundaries, that's really exciting. There's some really top, mostly American teachers on that.
Oh, wow.
And this is another good thing about the lockdown for me, is that a lot of people have started doing these kind of things online, and suddenly they become international.
Yes.
And whereas I've often dreamed of like going to the States and doing workshops there, it's not really practical.
No.
But in this situation, it is practical.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just get, and there are some fantastic online communities. I mean, yours is growing into one that's going to be good. I think Christian House has got his Facebook group, and those sort of things. And it's really nice to connect with people who are doing, working away, especially when you're stuck at home and there's no going out, no live gigs to go to or anything. It's nice to get that connection with people in a different way, really.
Yeah, and what I like so much about doing videos as opposed to doing books is that you get a response immediately.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do a book, it takes a year to write it. It takes a year for the publisher to bring it out.
Yeah.
It takes another year for you to get either any money or any reviews or any comments or anything. So, it's 3 years away before starting the book.
Yeah.
Whereas with a video, the day it comes out, you'll get some response.
Yeah. And also you can start seeing, I think you've mentioned this, you can see which are the really popular ones. So, the styles that are really, and you think, oh, well, I think your bluegrass and those sort of things, are they particularly popular in the gypsy jazz?
Well, the most successful, which is a big surprise to me, is the 20 blues licks.
Right.
Because although blues is an important core part of jazz and country and all sorts of stuff, certainly in Britain, not many people play blues violin.
No.
So why that should be almost 10 times more popular than any other video is still a bit of a mystery to me.
It's interesting though. Yeah. It's a good one though. So they're all good. They're all good. I think people should definitely go and subscribe to your YouTube. They should definitely look at your website. There's loads of information, interesting facts about you. My personal favourite is that you actually featured on a stamp once.
I did, yes.
And then you've got to go and look at the stamp. I mean, my goodness.
I never felt more proud than when I went to the post office, ordered the stamps, and said to the lady at the post office, "This is me." And she looked at it and said, yes, I think it possibly is.
I hope you got yourself a first edition stamped one, a special one.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks very much for joining me. Been really interesting. Thanks very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Well, I hope you found that interesting. There is one thing I forgot to ask during that conversation. I'd noticed from his videos that Chris has a Baggs Bridge pickup microphone attached to his violin. So I messaged him and asked if he ever uses that for recording. He said it's mainly used for his live work or to record if he's running the signal through an effects pedal. He usually records the sound of his violin via a microphone as he described. That will be of interest to any violinists watching this who are interested in doing any kind of recording. Okay, so do check in the description below for links to all Chris's books, channel, website and gear. If you have any comments or questions, post them below. I love to read them. Let me know what you think of this format. I've done a few of these interviews now and I'd certainly like to do more if you find them interesting. Do subscribe to the channel if you want more of my home recording tips and tricks. And if you have enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. That really helps me out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.